Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltesiak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. This season, it's all grit. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. Welcome to another episode. In this episode, we preview the Detroit Lions divisional playoff game against the Washington Commanders. We'll touch base on Wildcard weekend, discuss the upcoming matchup, hear from Chick Hernandez, who covers the Washington team regularly, and hit on any major storylines. That and more. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
This is James Williams, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Joining me today is Coach Jerry Angers, former high school Michigan Coach of the Year, as well as Coach of the Week by the Detroit Lions. He's a scouting and training director for Bull Rush Sports. Coach, good to have you here with us.
Great to be here, drinking out of my Not the Same Old Lions podcast coffee mug with that really good coffee we got for free. Maybe you could elaborate on that.
You must be talking about Roaster Jack coffee out of Traverse City.
Freaking unbelievable, guys. I went down and ground it up down at my neighbor's today, and I'm on my second pot, as you can tell.
Awesome. Well, joining us, and that's me and well-caffeinated Coach Angers, is James Cook, the senior sports writer for the Traverse City Record Eagle. James, good to have you here with us as well.
Good to be here. I'm not as caffeinated, I don't think. So I think Jerry's going to have to carry the show.
Wow, that's good. We all take our turns, and I'm excited for that. The other thing I'm excited for, again, I've announced a couple times, we do have a new Twitter page. I know we're like light years behind things on that, but it's at NTSOL Podcast. Folks, if you could be so kind to follow us, that would be nice. Just love to boost that up, get that mainstream a little bit more. And you won't believe this, but we now have Instagram as well. Again, behind the times on this, should have been doing this a while back, but we're slowly but surely developing some social media presence beyond what we've had before. Okay, final wrap up, our thoughts, so to speak, from the first round of the playoffs. AFC, to me, guys, this went pretty much as expected. I know a lot of people took the Chargers over Houston, but that was a 5-4 matchup. But in general, not a big surprise in the AFC for me. Anything from you, James, that surprised you?
No, yeah, like you said, it was pretty chalky. The 5-4 matchup is kind of anybody's game. You know, I think it's the 6-3 in the NFC seems to be the one that's always kind of the upset one, but the 5-4 one is pretty common too. All
right, Coach, any thoughts on the AFC? Anything from you that you saw?
Nope, figured win as expected.
All right, over to the NFC. I guess I would say the NFC didn't go really as expected. Green Bay fell flat, more flat than I expected, but probably not more flat than I should have expected based on them losing to Chicago the week before. So I was expecting more from that, but that's not what happened. The Vikings, well, they really fell flat against the Rams. They repeated regular season with a loss to the Lions followed by a loss to the Rams. So those were, two of the three matchups in the NFC. James, any thoughts or insights on that? That does lead us into your next point, I believe.
Yeah, well, the Lions are officially the kings of the North. I mean, as if they weren't before. They're the last one standing of the top division in the NFL, according to record. The Vikings. Man, they came out and they just did not look good. I don't know if the Rams just schemed them up or if they just had the Honolulu flu again. Because it's the second time in a row that they played the Rams after playing the Lions. I've kind of expected as poorly as they played that should have been a bigger margin.
Yeah, for sure. Coach, what are your thoughts on those two NFC games?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the Vikings would play them a little bit better. The Rams did a nice job with a little scheme change up with a little more press man coverage than they have run before in the past, as people didn't talk about. I think the Dan Campbell video ignited the Rams with saying, "We'll see you in 2 weeks." And hey, you're battling a team that has a lot going on at home with the wildfires. And Vikings went into a buzzsaw. The Rams wanted to play their best ball to try to put a smile on the Los Angeles area and all the fires in California. And I believe they did for 2 hours and not having to worry about what's burning around them, but what's burning on the football field. So
Oh,
kudos, and I raise my hand to the Rams for bringing a smile to the local faces.
for sure. And you said all those things are true there, Coach. And the Rams against the Vikings, a highly anticipated game. I want to go back to that comment you made about we'll see you in 2 weeks. I don't think Dan Campbell meant that as a slight to the Rams, and some people took it that way. They use it as their motivation. He was just trying to be complimentary of the opponent he had just defeated, because that's the type of guy Dan Campbell comes across as being. And so, and the Rams rested their players the last week of the season to make sure that they had some fresh people to be ready for this game. Now, the game we cared about, I guess, is one that happened before that, because that's the one that mattered. That was with Washington defeating Tampa. Very tight game. Jane Daniels, incredibly special for a rookie. Dan Quinn, great coach. They didn't punt, nor did they have an interception in that game. They went for it on fourth down multiple times in the red zone. And I do believe Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions have changed the NFL, and I believe this is just one more example of that. And so, James, quick thoughts on this victory in this game.
Yeah, this is pretty similar to the Lions winning a playoff game last year, and that it hadn't happened for a long time for this Washington franchise. They hadn't won one since 2006. That was also a 6-3 or 6-3 matchup, as far as the seeding goes, and it was at Tampa Bay as well. But the interesting thing is that back then, the quarterback for Washington, and I almost forgot that he played for them for a little while, was Mark Brunell. And he did not have a great game in that game either. He threw for 41 yards. Clinton Portis did most of the work on the offense. But just coming through with one of those big historic wins, I think the Commanders are kind of on that same Lions arc, maybe a year behind or whatever.
I do remember Mark Brunell playing for Washington. I was actually in Washington reporting that summer and attended the Washington training camp and him being there. And there was a lot of excitement around the team, which that hasn't often been said the last couple of decades around there. But they had more excitement even further back, James.
Yeah, well, I mean, for those of us that are old enough to remember, a lot of us probably want to forget the 41-10 drubbing in the 1992 playoffs. Detroit and Washington have played 3 times in the playoffs. Washington has won all 3 of them. But to be fair, our quarterbacks in those games were Eric Hipple, Eric Kramer, and Gus Frerotte. So,
And I believe at that point, Gus Frerotte was a former Washington quarterback.
yeah, they already moved on from him. So we're in a little bit better hands now.
That we are. Coach, some of your thoughts on the game that you saw.
Yeah, I think it's just another one where they came in and they have all these young guys believing and a young quarterback believing who's very talented, and again, you look at what happened, and we had Tampa had a couple big, huge miscues, and the game turned sideways, and a handoff and a fumble in that situation. So, but they continue to impress everybody with their great with their ability to score points and their ability to play above their youth. And again, Quinn was a throwaway, right? He's not a good coach, so goodbye. Same thing with the guys on their staff. So they're there to prove everybody wrong. And it's a good football team. Probably the best one we played all year.
Well, we're going to find out here real soon, and that Washington fan base is rejuvenated, to say the least. I was living out there when Dan Snyder bought the team, and there was a lot of excitement around that. I mean, I was always a Detroit Lions fan, but everybody out there was so excited, and what they got was like the complete opposite for, basically a couple of decades plus. And the team had a wait list back then. Like it was a very notorious wait list for season tickets. And then it went from that to the complete opposite of open seats and covering things with tarps and stuff. But this fan base is excited. This team's got a lot of excitement. They're catching the media buzz with a rookie quarterback. So guys, we now know who we're going to play. We're playing the Washington Commanders. What are your initial thoughts? Mine? No team is easy at this point. I've said that from the beginning. This is the best weekend of football in many people's eyes because you've got the best 8 teams there. That being said, I will fully admit I'm happy to avoid the Matthew Stafford Los Angeles Rams storyline for at least this week. If we have to deal with that in 2 weeks, or I mean in a week and a half, whatever, I'm okay with that. I wanted to avoid it for this week. Jerry, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with it. It's just nice to see a new face, a new team, not somebody that we played twice or three times the last year. Again, we're just happy to, be in a situation. We are hosting the divisional round, and that's what we want. We didn't have to go through the wild card situation, and hopefully we're well rested up. And let's see what the new rookie quarterback brings to the Ford Field and the craziness of our fans.
Yeah, I agree. It was nice to sit that wild card weekend out because wild things happen. And we were able to just avoid all that, rest up, get ready. James, what are your thoughts on now that we're facing Washington?
Yeah, I'd rather put the Stafford stuff off for a week, or maybe hope that it just kind of goes away. The Eagles can take care of that. So I think it's a win-win for the Lions next week in that Rams Eagles game. Either the Eagles win and put the Stafford talk to bed, or the Rams win and we don't have to contend with the Eagles again. Hopefully, assuming a win over the Commanders, of course.
Exactly. We have to go 1-0 this week. But I will say one thing I did want was I wanted Philly to play somebody other than Tampa. That was my only thought going in because I thought Tampa was a little bit of a weaker team. Not weak, but weaker than some of the others. And so that's what we do have. But that also means the Lions have a very hot team they're playing against. And I was never asking for any specific opponent for the Lions, but now we know who we have. And as we get started, I had a chance to speak with Chick Hernandez from WUSA 9, the CBS affiliate out of Washington, D.C., to get some insights on the Washington Commanders. Here's that interview. Joining me today is Chick Hernandez, a member of the preseason broadcast crew for the Washington Commanders, the main sports anchor for WUSA 9 out of Washington, D.C. And if that doesn't keep him busy enough, he also calls NCAA football and hoops games for the CBS Sports Network. Chick, thank you for taking time to talk to me today.
Absolutely. I'm a little bit if I look bad, I got a face for TV. This is trouble because I'm working on about 90 minutes of sleep after the Commanders and Buccaneers last night.
I can only imagine the hectic schedule you've got all week set.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy, but hey, last year and really the last 20 years, except for 2012, it wasn't a whole lot of stuff going on in the postseason when it comes to this franchise. But this franchise is completely different now, so it's a pleasure to cover them.
Well, let's start right there. I went to a game 5 years ago in Landover, Maryland, when the Lions were out there, and local fans were chanting, "Sell the team." They had T-shirts, "Sell the team." As you said, this once proud franchise was in the dumps. It seems like now, though, everything has flipped on its head. The big playoff win over Tampa Bay. Huge change in the last 2 years. Dan Snyder's gone. There's a new owner. There's a new coach. There's a new quarterback. Tell me about the atmosphere out there surrounding this team.
Yeah, I call it the decades of darkness under Dan Snyder. As much of a quote fan of the franchise that he was, he certainly didn't prove it when it came to smart decisions. So it's a 180 turn from what they were. I used to walk in the building the last 20 years and I get a look up and down like, how can I help you? Now I walk in and say, hey, Chick, what do you need? And their adults are running the building. So it starts at the top, Josh Harris, Mark Ein, Mitch Rails, the local owners who grew up in the area, who've lived and breathed what the Burgundy and Gold was. Just talked to Magic Johnson last night. He's part of the ownership group. So they got some people from the outside. And then, you hire Dan Quinn and Adam Peters. And if Adam Peters isn't the executive of the year, I don't know who is. If Dan Quinn isn't coach of the year, I'm not sure who is, because you kind of, talking about a team that lost 13 now has 13 wins. I know Detroit's done that over the span of a couple of years, improved each year. It's a lot of fun, and they're just different. They're very different than what we're used to. And I'm interested to see. I just sat down with Dan Quinn probably 2 hours ago, and we talked about Dan Quinn and Dan Campbell and how they're different guys, but they're all pulling from their team and trying to get the best out of their team. Some coaches say they do it, but you don't really see it. You're seeing it with Dan Quinn. I'm sure you see it with Dan Campbell. You're seeing it with Dan Quinn. It's not smoke and mirrors. He's about brotherhood, and to have a squad that, look, they've won. I'm rambling here because I'm tired, but they've won 6 games in which they were tied or behind in the last 10 seconds of the game. 6.
That's incredible.
Ridiculous. Things have to go the right way. It's a game of inches. Again, decades of darkness, and I think the football gods finally said, all right, enough is enough. We have crushed this franchise with Dan Snyder. Let's give them something. And right now it's a wild ride.
I believe it. And, 2 weeks ago, everybody was debating, is it Kevin O'Connell or Dan Campbell for Coach of the Year? But you're right. I think going into this game, this weekend, everyone's going to be like, is it Dan Campbell or is it Dan Quinn? Because both of them a really strong argument can be made for Dan Quinn.
No question.
Well, let me start with a guy that everyone's probably talking the most about, other than Dan Quinn, is going to be Jaden Daniels, a rookie quarterback who's looked extremely impressive, not just for a rookie, but like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFC this year. Tell me what you've seen watching him regularly throughout the season.
I went to his pro day at LSU because we knew that the Commanders had the number 2 pick. So I went to his pro day. I went to Caleb Williams' pro day at USC. I went to Drake Mays at North Carolina. But it was really apparent. I got a chance to talk with Coach Quinn outside before they went into LSU. It was really apparent that they were going to take Jaden. And I just asked Coach this today, matter of fact. I said, you watched him in college, you met him and interviewed him, and you got to know him a little bit, so you know what his physical traits are. But there's no way that you can figure out what kind of guy he is right away. And he said, you're right, but we kind of had a sense. No one had a sense for how cool and calm and collected this guy is. And it starts, as he credits his parents, but he's got a work ethic that is, I haven't seen it, in a long time. He's in the bubble at 5:30 in the morning. He's been that way since day one, working VR. And the Commanders bought the virtual reality for him and other players who wanted it, because you can do so much work when you're not on the field. And he's just really prepared. The X factor is that no one has really seen him use his physical gifts, other than, he's a great thrower, great runner. He hasn't even turned it loose yet. He's, as someone described it, he is a slalom skier when it comes to traffic. He's just kind of making his way through. He hasn't even put the jets on yet. And I think, when that happens, we're in the press box. There's no cheering in the press box. He's made throws, he's made moves where you can hear the audible, oh, right? You can't cheer, but you're like, oh,
right.
And, I was like, okay, all right. So he's just, they have the guy they want, and barring a major catastrophic injury, Robert Griffin III, although he was a track star in a football uniform, this is a football player in a football uniform in Jaden Daniels. This is the guy for years to come. He's just on that track, and so humble for the talent he has. And they rallied around him. I'll say one story is, a couple of games ago when he got hit late in the game and he's gassed and he's just sitting there and he's squatting, and Marcus Mariota comes over to tell him, everybody's seen it on NFL films. Hey, stand up, get your air, and win this game with your God-given talent. Before he came over, Mariota did, it was every single player came over and checked on him, tapped him on his helmet, tapped him on his shoulder to make sure he was okay. A lot of quarterbacks don't get that kind of love.
Yeah, that tells you about the rapport they have with their team. And you've already answered, I think, a few parts of the question I was going to ask you. He has a cannon for his arm. We saw that, especially with the Hail Mary against the Bears. So what are his strengths, or, what are they? We know his mobility. It sounds like his work ethic is one of his big strengths, and probably the rapport. He has immediately endeared himself to his teammates. But is there anything else that I'm missing?
No, he kind of checks every box is what he's done. He's kind of doing these little things here and there, and it's not pomp and circumstance. It's not fake. He just wants to know. And then he goes out and he proves, and Coach Quinn said, my heart rate's all over the place. If they were to put a monitor on Jaden Daniels, It is steady. There is not a weakness right now with Jaden Danielson. Defenses are throwing a bunch of different things at him. The only thing I do notice is when things are really, really pressured and tight, he will rely on himself to get it done. He'll rely on a throw. He'll rely on his legs to create more space and create more time. We're very lucky that he's the quarterback that I get to cover. He's a different cat. There's a lot of great quarterbacks in the league. There's not a rookie like this.
Yeah, I concur with a lot of those things. I've only seen a couple of his games, but I've been impressed thoroughly, especially when you add in the element that he's just a rookie too.
He said 3 games with no punts and no turnovers.
Yeah,
Right?
that's very incredible.
Not Brady, not Montana, not Manning, not Mahomes. I've done that.
Well, let's talk about the offense then, because that's some impressive company right there. The passing attack, Terry McLaurin, Zach Ertz, those are the 2 most recognizable targets.
Mm-hmm.
Daniels is the leading rusher, but Brian Robinson Jr. is right there behind him. Take me beyond their stats, though. What does this Washington team do well on offense?
Well, the cool thing is that, we've watched Terry McLaurin for 6 years, and he's kind of just, had quarterback after quarterback. I mean, I said it in the press box last night. Oh, I really miss Sam Howell, tongue in cheek. They were like, oh my gosh, you're right. He was here last year. We completely forgot. What they do well is, I think Cliff Kingsbury has gotten to know how to work Jaden Daniels. And so they have a couple of different weapons. We all know about Terry McLaurin. Big game from De'Ami Brown, who's kind of coming into his own here recently. Austin Eckler, I thought, was going to be a key factor, even though coming off the concussion. But, you get pressure on Jaden, and he's got Austin Eckler in one flat who can just make you miss, in a phone booth. And then you got the locomotive and Brian Robinson. So if you get that guy in space, they have not run the ball so well lately. And part of that is because their center Tyler Biadasz was out for a couple of games. But they're kind of getting back to a little bit, but they're so set on letting Jaden have the ball in his hands that they're kind of gone away from run a little bit. I don't know if you can do that in the playoffs. It happened, but they used passes in the flat as the run game. And that's what took place against Tampa Bay. Eckler and B-Rob, in the flat and getting some yards that way. So they do a lot of different things. Well, for heaven's sake, we saw first time this year, this happens in the playoffs, Marcus Mariota came in and Jaden Daniels went in motion.
I saw that.
We all were just sitting there going, wait a minute. And that was and then he did it later to try to get him to draw him off sides. But the first time, it was like, wait a minute, Jaden goes in motion and then Mariota gets the first down. I'm like, okay, so a lot of little tweaks to that offense. I think Cliff has kind of kept stuff close to the vest. I'm sure Detroit, Washington will probably show a new wrinkle or two come Saturday night at 8:00.
I expect a few wrinkles from both teams, especially after what I saw out of Washington this last game. You already hit on a little of that. It sounds like the answer to this next question might be the running game, but what does Washington's offense need to do better as the playoffs advance in order to, be competitive and or win the game?
Real question. I'd say this. It's hard not to have a run game and win. They just did it. But the run game is Jaden, because he'll get a lot of yards once he's flushed out of the pocket. I think any team will tell you, if you have the threat of the run, that opens up the pass. We all know that. And early in the season, they were pounding, and it was like they were a juggernaut. It goes back to the no punts. Tressway didn't punt for like 3 straight games. No punts and no turnovers. So, yes, that is the weak part on their offense right now. Can they get it back in time to go against a pretty good Detroit defense? Not sure, but it's going to go back to number 5 and let him create. If they don't have the run game, I think they'll still be okay. But it'd be nice for Cliff Kingsbury to be able to use that. And we'll see. I mean, Tyler Biadasz, the center, is going to have now 2 straight games back. And that's a major part of their offensive line.
All right. Well, the flipping over to the other side of the ball, then the defense, strengths and weaknesses. It looks like they're about 13th overall in yards allowed. Points wise, they look like they're kind of middle of the road right there. But take me beyond the numbers. I know Bobby Wagner was a huge addition this offseason at linebacker. I mean, that's a guy Lions fans were eyeing the last couple of seasons. And So just
Future Hall of
tell me a
Famer.
little bit about this defense.
Future Hall of Famer and Bobby Wagner, and then the combo with Frankie Louvu, another free agent. That was huge, and they worked so well together. But they struggle in that secondary. They're starting to get Marshawn Lattimore back. He struggled against Mike Evans the other night, although Evans was a savvy pro. He created 2 PIs on his own without Marshawn doing a whole lot. Marshawn's had a hammy. So they basically had Marshawn on a pitch count, which
Okay.
was, you cannot play all game long on that hammy. So they brought some other folks in. The liability is Benjamin St. Juste. If he's in there, I guarantee that Detroit's offense will go, okay, 25's in, let's go after him, because he's struggled all season long, a lot of penalties. Linebacking core is good. Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen, the two, bell cows up the middle. They don't get a whole lot of numbers, but they're taking bodies. They're getting teamed a lot. So that does free up Bobby and Louvu to make these plays. They're just not getting to the quarterback. And that's, they did early on in the season, that defense did, but then they've been good enough. And then they get pulled along by this whole brotherhood thing where they make a stop. I mean, Wagner, recovers a fumble, allows them to, have a short field and get in on a score on a 4th and 2. That
was incredible play.
Right?
Well, let's look at that a minute. In their game against Tampa, Washington went for it twice in the red zone, maybe 3 times in the red zone on 4th down. Twice they didn't kick and they got stopped.
Right.
Was that surprising to you, or is that something you've seen often this year? I have not seen a number of games.
Sure. Well, it's not surprising at all. Dan Quinn has basically, when they're on offense and they're getting down towards, even on their own end of the field, he will warn Cliff Kingsbury, look, if you have the situation, you get down to a 4th and 2, 4th and 3, we're going. So call your 3rd down play. We're going, no matter what. That's the way he's felt about it. They are 82% on 4th down, which leads the entire league. I know Detroit's pretty good at 66, but 82%. And it gives, as the players told me, it gives them a confidence that if we're close, we're going to do it. And they got stopped a couple times. And then on a 4th and 2, could have kicked the field goal, got within 1. He's like, no, we're going. And Daniels drops back and finds McLaurin on a freaking circle back route. And you're like, there it is. There's the touchdown. And here we go. He's been that way, Dan Quinn, all season long. It's almost surprising when we do see a Tressway come out and punt on a 4th and 2, 4th and 3. You're like, oh, I wonder why. Man, it could be wind, it could be just, the wrong side of the field, too deep in their own territory. But no, it's not surprising at all. And they have been the best on 4th down in the league.
I'm going to say maybe some of the Detroit Lions are rubbing off on other parts of the league. And I want your perception on this, because a lot of people have criticized Dan Campbell for multiple years now for his aggressive nature. And you're outside the Detroit, outside the Michigan area. Would love your perception. It seems that this is becoming more commonplace around the NFL in the last couple of years. I can't help wondering if the Lions maybe were the ones leading the charge, or at least one of the front runners in it.
Dan Quinn was asked about going for it on 4th down and when and why, and where did he get this attitude? And he said, yeah, it's not me. It's player driven. I have the player that can do this. So, would he do it if Sam Howell's his quarterback? There's no chance. Marcus Mariota, maybe. Marcus is a tremendous backup, but he's got the player that can handle dropping back, creating, using his legs if he has to. He did it on a 3rd and 2. He did it last night. They needed it, and he got touched 4 yards back in his own, backfield, got away, turned the corner, gets the 1st down, extends the drive, game-winning field goal. It's just about, and I don't doubt that Quinn has looked at Dan Campbell, because when Quinn left Atlanta, he basically set about trying to figure out, he went to former coaches, former players, and said, what can I do better? Where are my deficiencies? Had it all in the journal, right? He went and because he figured he'd get another shot at some point as a head coach. So he learned a lot about himself. I think one of the things he learned was, and it is, you're right, I think the league, if they have the proper personnel, are saying, you know what, let's go, because you make that more times than not. You've created more offense. You've created a shorter field. You've created momentum, which turns into things. You know, if you were a team that got stopped a lot, then that's the opposite. You feel bad about yourself. Dan Quinn has not wavered when it comes to fourth down, and it's fun. It's a cool brand of ball. I know that Detroit fans are questioning it every now and again, but I mean, look at the results. The numbers don't lie.
Oh, yeah, and I think the Detroit Lions fans are loving it. I think a lot of the media has questioned it. The national media are the ones. And the Lions started doing it early on when maybe they were lacking enough talent, and people thought he doesn't have to take the risk. He's got the talent now. But like the Washington team, the Lions, it's a mindset in the team. And so it is an exciting brand of football, and you're seeing it more and more. You saw it in the not the playoff game, the regular season game between the Rams and the Bills. And, you know, it definitely changes the dynamics of things.
No, there's no question about it. And they're playing a brand of ball, and I think other teams really didn't want to see them because they hang around and they don't flinch. So this is gonna be an interesting game. Obviously, Detroit's had some time off, and Washington works on a shorter week. We'll see. I think it's going to be a kind of one of those knockdown dragouts where there'll be some points scored on a fast surface.
Yeah, so the spread opened at 8.5. Did that number? I didn't expect it to be that high. Did that surprise you? And what are you expecting out of this matchup?
I haven't thought about numbers in forever. I'll just be honest with you. But what doesn't surprise me is that folks keep looking at Washington and going, they're not. It's like, oh, the kid, well, they're doing some things, but they're not bowling at. You know, they're not saying this is a juggernaut. So I can understand the line, because Detroit has been so good all season long, and they're at home in front of their home folks. So I can understand the line. I think the Commanders take the tack that, yeah, just keep not believing in us. It's fine. They don't concern themselves with lines, obviously, but it's like just the national media. But the national media right now talks about Jaden, right? They don't talk about the Commanders team. They talk about Jaden, and the team is like, yeah, we are Jaden. So you know, feel free to discount us, but you know, he is him. We are him. Let's go. I can't. Sound like a broken record, but I've never seen it before. When Robert Griffin III, his rookie year, that 2012, when it was tremendous, you know, I looked at him, and as I said, he was a track star in a football uniform. I knew that the body wasn't going to hold up because he didn't know how to protect himself. Jaden is starting to slide better, and again, that whole slalom thing, he's taking care of himself when it comes to traffic. I think, you know, crunch time, he'll throw his body in there. He did that a couple times this year when he had to have it. And that's, you know, that's also another confidence thing for his teammates. Like he's not shying away, and so they go that extra mile for him.
All right. Well, in that narrative, like you said, it changes so quickly, because you said a lot of people weren't talking about Washington. Well, 3 weeks ago, all you heard was the Lions defense couldn't stop anything. And then they had that phenomenal defensive effort against the Minnesota Vikings in week 18. So there's a lot to come from this game. At this point, I tell everybody, you're in the final 8 of the NFL. Every team is legit at this point. Anything can happen on any game. And so let me put it out there. If Washington is going to win this game, what needs to happen by the Commanders?
I think they have to buy some time for Jaden. The pressure a couple times is, you know, a couple of teams have gotten to him, and it's been a little bit rattling, but they've obviously recovered. Washington has to get off to a quick start. They had a 17-play, 92-yard drive against Tampa Bay that took over 8 minutes. Took Mayfield off the field, basically. If they have a sustained drive or two, that's what they need to keep Detroit's offense off the field. I think that's the key for Washington, because Jaden's going to make some throws that you just, you know, and Terry McLaurin best catcher in traffic right now. Even like whoever measures that, it's like he's one of the top 3 guys. Any contested catch, it's disgusting what he's doing because he's so into what's going on with his career and this team. So I think if they get a quicker start than they have over the last month, that's what they need to do in order to be in this thing. They just want to be around at the end. I mean, I think that's really what's going on. They just want to be around at the end. If we're around at the end, watch us, from the Hail Mary on, just watch us. It's insane.
I think you said it right there. Is they've won so many games in the final moments that that's the story of their season, that if they're in it, watch out. And so maybe that's the answer right there. The next is, if the Lions are going to win, what do they need to do against Washington? It sounds like one is don't give them a chance at the end, but what else is there? Yeah,
I mean, no, they've got to, I think for Detroit, they've got to put pressure and get to Jaden early. They've got to hit him and get him early, and create some havoc in that pass game. I don't think Washington is that concerned if they don't have a run game, because they've proven they can do it with the the passes to the flat. But I think they need to get to Jaden early, create that pressure. He hasn't made a whole lot of mistakes.
No, he hasn't.
No, he hasn't made a whole lot of mistakes. But if you're gonna have to turn that ball over. Joe Witt Jr., the DC for Washington, says ball is life. They got the one turnover against Tampa Bay, which allowed them to score and turn that game around. So I mean,
that was huge.
Ridiculous. Week in, week out, something's happening. So the longer route way, Detroit has to get pressure on Jaden early, and kind of shut them down in that first quarter to where they're starting to press a little bit.
All right. Chick, before we get out of here, any final thoughts, any last things that Lions fans should know about this Washington team that they might not know?
Might not know. So it's a what you don't know is that it's just a vastly different organization. So expect them to come prepared.
I would expect nothing less. And that's why when I mentioned the 8.5 point spread, those numbers, there's a lot of things those numbers can't measure. And I think Lions fans know that from the last couple of years when the Lions have been counted out. Out of the 8 teams left, I think all 8 of them are very competitive. Wildcard weekend's over. We're into the divisional round, and it's going to be quality football.
Let's survive in advance, and that's the best part of it. It's nerve-wracking. Every player knows it. It's the post game is you walk into a winning locker room and it's nothing better, right? I walk in last night and there's Magic Johnson sitting outside the locker room, and I go and ask him a question on camera. I'm thinking this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Next week could be a loss, and there's the walking into that atmosphere is tough, and then flying back and going to locker closeout. It's the worst feeling. Only one team doesn't feel that.
Right.
Only one team doesn't feel that. The rest of the teams, 31 teams, feel it, and the media corps feels it too. We don't root, but we feel it because we've gotten to know these guys, and especially for me, this group, which has brought Washington D.C. and flipped it upside down to where they just a lot of things are happening. This team is going to probably have a new stadium back in DC where it was many years ago. A lot of stuff is happening, going in the right direction. They're getting the breaks. So as what did Eddie Jordan, the old Wizards coach, once said, it's nut crunching time. It is.
Awesome. Well, Chick, thank you so much for your insights. Are you traveling to Detroit?
I will be there, arriving Friday. Get a little dinner with one of my buddies up there, hopefully, Dan Miller. And then, game time Saturday night, and no rest for the weary. That game will end around 11:30, 12 o'clock. Do a post-game piece, and then be on a plane at 7:15 the next morning.
There you go. Last week I was at the Lions game against Minnesota, and I was in a car ride home, and I was up to work the next morning at 8 a.m. No rest for the weary. I hope you have good travels. I hope you sleep on the airplane, enjoy the dome. I'm going to be down there myself, and so might see you in the stadium. Not likely. It's going to be pretty filled up, but safe travels. Thanks for the time and the insights, and a pleasure speaking with you.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Folks, that's Chick Hernandez, main sports anchor for WUSA, the CBS affiliate out of our nation's capital. You guys, we got some great insights there from Chick. Now, let's hear from Coach Campbell when he was asked about the expectations this year for the Lions and if the raised expectations creates extra pressure and if there is extra attention.
Like, see, you put that into words like, no, I don't think about, man, we're the 1 seed. So if if you guys don't succeed, then, I never think like that. I don't know. To me, I look at it as like, I know who we are. I know what we're about. I know how we have to prepare. I respect the opponent. And now it's time to go to work. That's how I look at it. I don't look at anything else. I don't think of what if it doesn't. What if the what ifs, like, man, I couldn't sleep at night if I lived that way. There's no freaking way. So no, I don't think of that. We're the 1 seed. We earned the 1 seed. We got a good opponent coming in, and we're going to be ready to play. That's how I look at it. We've had attention for 4 years here. I mean, there's been more stuff that's been made out, that's been built one way. We've been so good. We've been so bad. We're a laughing stock. Now we're great. And it's just been this roller coaster of up and downs. And it's the next week of it. You know what I mean? And so this is nothing new that we're in right now. This is nothing new for me, for the coaches, for the players. We're in the middle of the circus, man. And it's about time to perform. That's the world we're in.
You guys, I thought Campbell's response was perfect on that. Not just his response, but his response was authentic, which tells me that was his perspective as well. And Coach, let's start with you. I mean, well, you watched it as it was happening. How were you feeling?
I loved it. I could see him. Few of the questions, I don't know if he was getting upset with them, but I think he was, basically repeating and answering what he answers all the time, and again, let's go back to what I say all the time, 1-0. The expectations are, if we don't take care of this week, this Saturday at 8:00, doesn't matter what our expectations are. If we have injuries and we worry about them and not worry about what's in front of us and who's on the playing field, we don't get to these positions. So that's Campbell's perspective. And he's, he's excited. He's ready to go. And he doesn't care who comes to the house. He just wants to make sure his players are ready. And that's what I got out of that. And just a great thing. I love when he fired back some questions at the reporters. I think he said, "What do you think?" Or "What do you?" And I was like, "Yeah, baby, get it." So, hey, let's lock and load. Commanders are coming to town.
There you go. James, your thoughts?
Yeah, he did a good job of answering the questions and not saying anything that's going to give the opposition any bulletin board material or motivation or anything like that. I mean, this is certainly not the time when you really want to do that. So I think that's just one of those things that's, a little Belichickian, we're on to Washington kind of thing, and not say anything more than you have to.
For sure. And again, I like the fact that he's not trying to own or hold some sort of pressure that doesn't need to exist. It's manufactured. That's the type of stuff that you can choose to put on yourself that can then overwhelm you. He's doing what Coach does, 1-0, 1 week at a time. Folks, like Campbell said, the circus is here, aka the playoffs. It's time to get going. So we're on to Washington. If you look across the board at the season numbers, the Lions have significantly better numbers in a lot of categories than Washington does throughout the season. But I will tell you, and you guys have probably already analyzed this as well, Washington's numbers have improved as the season has gone on, and we have seen the Lions take a dip in the last part of the season. Now, there was that bounce-back performance against the Vikings with Anzalone being back, and some people might wonder, well, after we saw the Vikings go down 2 weeks in a row, was that the Vikings falling apart? Was that the Lions causing them to fall apart? What was that? That was one game. So let's start with this. What are we expecting out of Washington? Their offense, the Lions' defense. Coach, let's start with you.
First of all, if we're going to talk about it, let's get the white elephant out of the room. Oh my God, another mobile quarterback. And what do we always hear? Lions are terrible against mobile quarterbacks. Well, let's explain something. The Lions have played against 3 mobile quarterbacks this year. They are 2-1. Okay. The Lions played against a mobile quarterback, our loss, the Buffalo Bills. Okay, who ran pretty well on us and threw pretty well on us. But let's get to the positives of that. Alex Anzalone and Trevor Nowaski, who got hurt that week of practice, did not play in that game, and possibly Maven too. So I think that's some of the things that we have to look at. Some of the positives.
Yeah, you're right. Our linebacking core was the area they attacked a lot, passing as well. And so there were multiple facets in there, Coach.
Oh, yeah. And, that's the same thing, passing as well on that. And again, they ran that one play. We even talked about it after the Bills game where both linebackers went to the play and Allen walked into the end zone untouched, nobody near him. So I think that's, that's a positive for us. We can get into some more details on there. So, that's the white elephant in the room, another mobile quarterback. I put some film together for you guys to look at, as well as everybody else to look at, on what we have to do and what some teams did against them to stop that.
Yeah, because the Lions defense is going to need to contain Daniels as best as possible. I mean, he is their leading rusher, right? I mean, Brian Robinson Jr. is their second leading rusher, and it's really close. But containing Daniels is going to be important on that part. James, what do you want to add to this?
Yeah, maybe we can cut this part, or I don't know if it doesn't go or whatever. But did you guys see RG3's tweet about mobile quarterbacks and how they're the future of the NFL, and that 7 of the 8 quarterbacks that are left are mobile quarterbacks, and Jared Goff's the only one who's not? And I'm like, that means you're counting Matthew Stafford as a mobile quarterback, or CJ Stroud? Even
It's
Patrick
possible.
Mahomes isn't really a mobile quarterback. I mean, just because you can move in the pocket, I guess maybe he's conflating mobile and running quarterback.
Maybe, but I also say this, that might be the future, and be careful because the future doesn't always arrive when you think it will. I believe it was the 1991 Super Bowl. The no-huddle offense was the future of the NFL, and everyone thought the Buffalo Bills were going to beat the New York Giants. And that was an epic, epic game. The New York Giants were old school, though, and they managed to win that game. Now, the Lions are going to have to face Jaden Daniels and that aspect, as does anybody. And you're right, James. It does bring a different element, but it's not just one thing. There's usually 4 or 5 variables that go into things. And Jaden Daniels, surprisingly maybe not, is better against the blitz versus not being blitzed. His numbers are actually better against that. The Lions like to send extra people. And I heard he is better against man coverage than zone coverage. And so the Lions kind of do the opposite of both of those. And so, Coach, do you think that, I mean, we've seen Aaron Glenn scheme things up specifically for opponents, right? I mean, they're just going to continue to do more of that, right?
Oh, for sure. And let's go back to with the Bills. I say nice to have that on film. I talk about we've got that on film with what happened with the other mobile quarterbacks we had. So those are things that live to play another down. What I mean by live to play another down is once they do, they're going to get plays. Live to play another down. Don't let him break it. Don't let him splash it. Those are things that you want to look at. And yes, we're going to change some things up. Maybe he is better against the blitz, but how many times do people run zero coverage when they blitz? Okay, I'm just telling you. I mean, yeah, maybe he does it. Oh, and he's better against man. Well, maybe they're sitting just a 3-man blitz and man. Who knows? And Glenn's going to dial those things up. I'll throw some numbers at you. JD last week was 9 for 15, 108 yards, 2 tutties. 3rd and 4th down, he had 7 first downs throwing pass and 7 first downs in those 9 for 15. And he threw past the sticks 80% of those throws. He threw past the sticks, 80 past the first down marker. That's so now those are those 50-50 balls in, but if it's a zone coverage, then he's just sending those routes in there. So AG will have something dialed up for that. And if he's going to target, who's he target on that? We have 2 pretty good safeties sitting back there and a nickel safety that's pretty good too with Branch. So that'll be interesting. So if that makes sense from that. Now, let me throw a few more numbers at you on their offense. Rushing versus light box, the Commanders' offense is number 6 in the NFL, where the Lions is 30th. Well, We had a light box with the weeks when our linebackers were gone. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. Our boxes are not going to be light this week. We have linebackers. That's just my feeling. That
Okay.
so the Commanders have the thing. Quarterback scrambles. Commanders offense is number 1. We're number 17 against that. Okay. But we have 3 films to look over to adjust that. Okay. We have 3 running quarterbacks that we've done a fine job on that. We're going to give them the numbers on it because that's what's showing. Rushing out of shotgun, they're number 3. We're number 26 against it. Again, we're not going to have a light box, guys. We're going to have 3 linebackers in there. That's my feeling because we're going to go cover 1 and cover 0. Okay,
So more base defense is what you're thinking, and
Yeah.
then also, Coach, is there a chance that we're going to try and contain the quarterback in the pocket versus destroy the pocket? And if you're going to mess the pocket up, we're going to want that coming from the middle with DJ Reader and company, pushing it upwards, but not letting Daniels flush out to the left or the right.
Yes, I think so. And I think they'll try to corral that and keep them inside there. And that's going to be edge pressure. And that's kind of, filling your gaps, make sure your gap responsibility. If you have the outside gap, that's the outside gap. The Lions are going to do I believe, are going to be taught up that, hey, if the play's away, we stay in case the play comes back. That's how Josh Daniels runs. And he takes some shots, man. He took a shot last week on the sidelines. And I think that's the thing that, we're going to get into that situation. Don't try to be the hero. Okay. Don't try to be the hero. And I think that's what we're going to do. A couple of quick stats. Rushing inside the tackles, they're number 4. Okay. Our defense is number 22. I disagree with that. I think that was, there's such a small margin when you're talking those things. And I think that when we gave up 30, 30, and 30, when we had all those linebackers hurt, I think that skewed the numbers a little bit. That's my math terms. You guys want to know what skew means. And then the last one is passing versus play action. Okay. They're number 15. We're number 1. Okay. Because we play against that in practice all day long. So that's the only bonus we have on that. Everything else they have the numbers, but I think a lot of it has to do with the injuries, and what we have coming back are gonna balance those numbers a little bit.
That makes a lot of sense. James, what are some of the things you're seeing out of this matchup?
Well, I could see, I mean, like kind of what Jerry said. I think that you'll see Aaron Glenn come up with something different, a game plan tailored specifically for Jaden Daniels and the Commanders, just like they did last week. I mean, we hadn't seen a scheme like what the Lions did last week pretty much all season, where they ran, I think, 14 passing snaps of cover 0. They hadn't done that all year. That was the most in the NFL any team has run in one game. And then those 6-man blitzes that, they hadn't really been doing that too much. If they did blitz, it was usually sending one guy extra, or maybe a couple of those 2-man blitzes, but not nearly as many as they did last week. I think blitzed 53% of the time against the Vikings. So I think you'll see a hybrid. Like I said, like Jerry said, I think they'll play a little bit kind of more base defense and a little less maybe nickel as their base, but and maybe just still play man on the outside, because I don't see him bringing Terry and Arnold back from an injury and then saying, oh, hey, now we're going to ask you to play zone. But play man on the outside and the corners, and then some kind of mesh zone concepts in between with linebackers, maybe even the occasional defensive end dropping off that we've seen once in a while. But I don't think you take Zadarius Smith out of the pass rush situation to do that. And we saw last week too that they played Levi and Pascal on at D tackle more, which was specific, to crush the pocket from the inside as much as the outside, and then you bring Smith and Muhammad from the outside. So I think that it's going to be a hybrid defense this week, and Jaden Daniels is going to see some looks that he hasn't seen this season.
I can't disagree with that. I love that idea. I do think the Lions improved secondary from a year ago. It's going to be tested a little bit because Jaden Daniels' arm is impressive. And it's not just his arm strength, it's his release. It is so quick that he gets that out there. And that's going to be key in this game, though. And I think that is going to be the difference maker. I think that is the difference maker, and how far this Lions team can go this year is the improved secondary play, even with the injuries. And having that extra depth this year, we're going to see it right now. Now, the running game, and well, staying with the secondary, I guess, Terry McLaurin is a consummate professional. That guy gets it done year after year. They got Zach Ertz over there, a guy who was briefly on our roster in the postseason last year. He's had an amazing season. They've got some other younger guys that are stepping up. And so we'll see if they target McLaurin more or if they are spreading the ball around. Coach, any of those receivers that you're kind of like, hey, here's someone Lions fans should be looking at because, maybe they're not a household name, but they're still dangerous?
Wow, scary Terry. We already know him.
Yeah.
And that I can't remember what the other ones come along the last 3-4 games. Oh, I can't remember what the wideout is. I'm sorry, I drew a blank.
No, you're thinking
Brown?
of Diami Brown.
Yes, that one. Yeah, I don't know how I couldn't remember that name. It's a common name. Yeah, he's really come along, and I think Daniels was looking at him a little bit more. The thing about their offense is they're playing with house money. They have a rookie quarterback, and they have a brand new staff, and those 50-50 balls and just launching things up and seeing if somebody makes a play on them is, that's house money for them. They're coming into our house, and so I think you're going to see him takes a lot more chances. And I think that's where our safeties, the great safeties that we have to make maybe, a couple more INTs to stop him.
That makes sense. And you're right. They're going to come in loose, which is also why I appreciated Campbell's response about, expectations, because he's not going to cause that to have them play tight. They know the team they are, they're on a mission, and they're going to play that way. They're going to play loose. Now, James, the running game, Brian Robinson Jr., he is their main back. They have Austin Eckler. He was injured. He's come back. What are you seeing out of this running game?
Yeah, well, I mean, kind of one thing, the Commanders remind me a lot of the Lions in several ways. They had a coach that's a leader of men kind of guy who goes forward on fourth downs a lot. They've turned things around from laughingstock to playoff team after a change in ownership. So there's a lot of common points, I think, on their trajectories. And another one of the things is that pretty right away, that this regime invested in the offensive line. That two of their biggest free agents this offseason were on the offensive line. They brought in Tyler Biadasz from the Cowboys. They brought in Nick Allegretti from the Chiefs. Both, especially Biadasz was a pretty big contract. So, they've upgraded the offensive line. I mean, but Brian Robinson, he did get dinged up kind of middle of the season, I think, hurt his knee a bit and really kind of hasn't seemed to be the same running back since then. In the last 3 games, he only has 86 yards total and only averaging 3.1 a game or a carry. 3 weeks ago against Philly, he fumbled twice in a 3-point loss. I mean, so that was big. And then, Austin Eckler he's still pretty good in the passing game. Eckler, is a good guy at picking up the blitz and a good guy at sneaking out into the flat, catching a ball and getting a decent gain. But he's not between the tackles running back anymore. So their running game is a little bit of a liability, I think, at this point in the season. And I think that's something the Lions are going to use in that defensive scheme too. I don't think that they're going to have to sell out to stop the run.
That makes sense. And I will say, Tampa is pretty good against the run in general. So they held Washington to 82 yards. If you look back and see what the Lions did back, I think it was week 2, Tampa has a good rush defense. I do think Washington's going to try to get the run going because that will keep our offense off the field. But getting it done and wanting to get it done are 2 different things. So we'll see what happens with that. Coach, any final thoughts on the Lions defense against the Washington offense?
It's contain.
All right, James, anything you want to add on this?
Just one interesting tidbit about Jaden Daniels is that you notice, he had that first game of the season where he looked very, very tentative and it looked like they had the training wheels on and all that. And then it didn't take very long at all for Cliff Kingsbury to get some confidence in him and just take the training wheels off totally. He doesn't play with one of those armbands on his arm that has all the play calls on it. He's got it all in his head. And they've given him the ability to change plays at the line of scrimmage, which is something you don't see a lot of rookie quarterbacks being given those reins. So, that's a heck of a lot more confidence that Cliff Kingsbury has shown in Jaden Daniels than he ever showed in Kyler Murray.
For sure. And, you know, one of the really interesting nuggets I got out of that interview with Chick Hernandez was he said Jaden Daniels is one of the hardest working football players he's ever seen. And Chick's been around a while. He's seen a number of players at the college level and pro level. And that work ethic is showing off immediately because that's the difference between, accelerating your rookie year or hitting that rookie wall 10 to 12 weeks in. And so it's going to be a matchup. And I know we'll talk about the spread and all that. Don't underestimate this team is all I'm saying. Don't underestimate that quarterback. I will say this right now. Kind of glad he went number 2 instead of number 1 overall. All right, from what I'm seeing right now, because I like him not being in our division. Now, coaching matters, and we don't know what Caleb Williams will do yet in the future. But for right now, that's what I'm liking. All right, let's flip it around. The Detroit Lions offense against this Washington Commanders defense. Coach, get us started here. Washington's rush defense not looking too hot. Their pass defense is better. It's going to be interesting to see what the Lions can do on the ground. David Montgomery's going to be back, so that'll be nice. But, you went deeper into this than I did. What are some things you're seeing?
Yeah, they're giving up 137 yards a game rushing, but here's some numbers that I, looked at. First of all, are they skewed? We got 5 stars on 5 categories, which means we totally dominate those. Passing versus no play action, we're number 2. Their defense is number 30. Short passing, we're number 1. Their defense is number 24. Passing versus the blitz, we're number 3. They're number 27. Passing versus no pressure, we're number 1. They're number 21. And overall pass efficiency, we're number 2. They're number 22. So huge numbers. I mean, that's the thing is it going to get to a shootout? What can we do? They play a ton of nickel, very high number, 83.2%. They
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, they like the blitz on second and long 51% of the time. Third and long 33, which is the third, and then third and mids, which is your 4 to 7 yards, 34% of the time. So I think that's and then on their blitzes, and I'm throwing these numbers out on their blitzes, cover 0 on 60% of their blitzes. They run cover 0 in that situation.
So Coach, I mean, what you're saying right here is, I mean, our defense against their offense, yeah, there's an advantage, but here you see a much wider gap. You see our offense at a very high level and their defense against our offense at a very different level. And if they play nickel that much, I mean, can you imagine what that could do for Ja Gibbs and for Monty? I mean, the ground game, it could really open some things up. So it'll be interesting to see if Washington schemes things differently for that.
Yeah, which they may, they may pull some stuff out. Now, again, they're playing with house money. They're going to have to figure out what are we going to do to get the Lions off. And I think they're coming into the game defensively and saying, can we beat them in the turnover battle? Can we get 1 or 2 away from Detroit and not give Detroit any? That'll kind of balance the equation right now. And again, their offense against our defense shows some skewed numbers, I think, where our offense against their defense shows not skewed numbers. That's just how good we are, and everybody knows that. So it'll be interesting to see when you start looking at those numbers how it's going to balance out. And as long as we don't turn the ball over, I think we're in pretty good shape.
I think that's exactly it. If you look back at the last game, that was the difference in the game against Tampa. It was that fumble by Tampa that was the difference in the game. James, what do you have here on the Lions offense against the Washington Commander defense matchup?
Yeah. The run defense, like Jerry said, has not been great. I think the Lions will exploit that. If they can just pound and pound and pound with the run, and then get the Commanders to try to play man on the outside on St. Brown and Jamison Williams, they're going to be in trouble. They'll take 1 or 2 deep shots to Jamison Williams, and that could be the backbreaker for the Commanders if they hook up on 1 or 2 of them. So I'll come back to that much later in the predictions in the thing. But remember last year, Ben Johnson was a finalist for the Washington job and then said no thanks. A lot of Redskins fans are bringing that up and saying, oh, well, maybe he should have taken this job because he said he couldn't win here. And then Dan Quinn came in and won. So, Ben Johnson's going to be motivated for this game because he doesn't like being proven wrong at all. Um, if you go back to what Dan Quinn did when he came in, he brought three defensive players with him from Dallas. Dorrance Armstrong, defensive end, Dante Fowler, defensive end, and a backup cornerback, whose last name I am not even going to try to pronounce. And then all three of them are starters this year for Washington on pretty reasonable deals. But the defense has kind of been their weakness this season, but they don't have the bevy of injuries to blame, unlike the Lions. But they have had some pretty nice areas of the thing. I mean, Bobby Wagner is still an elite linebacker in the NFL. Jeremy Chin, who is a strong safety they brought in free agency, has been one of their other best defenders this season. And then Frankie Louvu had a really good season last year with Carolina. Kind of taken a step back this year, but he's still got almost 100 tackles this year. And then Fowler and Armstrong have got over 15 sacks between the two of them. So he brought a lot of sacks with him from Dallas.
They've got a lot of production from these free agent additions. And Bobby Wagner just continues to, drink from the fountain of youth. I mean, the guy is just continuing to play well. And so those have been some big additions to help with this very dramatic, very quick turnaround by the Washington team. Well, let's move over to special teams and what makes this special. Well, how many punts will there be in this game? I want to know what the over/under is for punts in this game, and is it 1.5? Is it that low? It's probably. I don't even know what the average number of punts in a game is, but we know both teams go for it a lot, and it was interesting. Again, talking to Chick Hernandez, I did not quite realize that Washington was number one at successfully converting fourth down attempts, around 82% or something like that. And again, we saw it in the Wildcard game, and he didn't kick the field goal. That's 6 points. They could be winning right now. And then doesn't do it a third time, but gets that touchdown. So I think looking for the punts, and if there are any, punt return, punt coverage, and converting field goals, because you guys, this is the fourth kicker Washington is on this season. And so I think all those things are going to play a role, as well as coaching. Coach, what are your thoughts on special teams? Then, James, I want to get your thoughts.
Well, hopefully we don't have to punt it all, even though we have the best punter, which could flip the field. I'm hoping Gonzalez, I hope he can't get his socks on correctly. And I hope that he can't straighten his hair out before he puts his helmet on, because if we can get some of those things to fall, I know you guys wanted to talk about that, but that sock thing, him on the sidelines, that OCD, I was just loving it. And I'm thinking, man, the memes are going to blow up this week on that poor guy. So I give us the kicker there, and I'm sure that the Lions special flip is working on something right now that if it comes down to a tying field goal or something like that, he's going to do. I don't know if he's going to throw a brush out there or throw a pair of socks out there with a hole in them. So, but I'll give us that on the special teams.
All right, James, what do you got here for special teams?
Yeah, Zane Gonzalez is a pretty interesting guy. He's been pretty open over the years about having OCD and everything, which it kind of makes him a pretty likable guy. I mean, I have some OCD traits too, and so and he was just money in that game. I mean, and I noticed it too. And the thing with him doing his hair, so many times, I was like, is this a bit? And then I looked into it afterwards, and everything. But I mean, every kicker seems to have a different personality, right? Kickers and punters seem to be historically in the NFL have kind of been the odd ducks in the league. I mean, you remember Matt Prater and his smelling salts? Before every kick, you would see him going and sniffing smelling salts before he ran onto the field. So everybody's got their own superstitions, and I imagine kickers are way more so than others. But yeah, you're right. You could see not very many punts in this game because both coaches love to go for it on fourth down. And their punter is also, it's kind of a similar situation because their punter is very good when they use him. And his name is Tress Way. That's really his name.
Okay. So let's move on to major storylines and unexpected stuff. I want to talk about some all-pro accolades. I'm on Ross St. Brown. Kirby Joseph. What? He made the Pro Bowl? No. he made All-Pro, which is better than the Pro Bowl. Thank you very much. I feel like that happened to Amon-Ra St. Brown one year. I could be wrong, but it seems like it did. Sewell and Fox also made it, so that is pretty amazing to get those guys in there. Amon-Ra St. Brown is back with his blue hair. Guys, first, let's quickly, Pro Bowl accolades. How good does that feel? Do you think anybody was missed? I'm sure we could say 3 or 4 guys were missed, but the guy I'm happy for the most is Kirby, just because of all the stuff around him not getting the Pro Bowl there, Coach.
Oh yeah, I think it's great. Yeah, you're going to go back and forth all the time and say, hey, this guy, why did Rags not get it? Why did this guy not? I mean, Lane Johnson's upset that Sewell got it over him. I mean, he's got that pinned to his locker. He's got it pinned to his locker. But they also said that he didn't have any sacks. And then I watched the Green Bay game, and they ran right by him and sacked him in the first game. So I guess those are. And again, Lane Johnson, Sewell, there's hand in hand on who the best are. The nice thing is Sewell's a young pup, but yeah, Kirby's the one that helps for me, because I think he wasn't getting his due because of some of the bad press and stuff like that. But I think he's what he does in the public eye in Detroit is not seen by the people in the nation, and I think that's just beautiful to see. But yeah, the whole team, the whole offense, defense, special teams, coaches, mascot, pregame, that should all be All-Pro.
Even the mascot. You hear that? Coach wants our mascot Rory to be All-Pro. James, your thoughts on any of the All-Pro accolades?
Yeah, and it's nice to see Kirby get that after the snub in the Pro Bowl. So that one's just really nice. Sewell, I think we expected that one, right? I'm going to be interested to see Sewell go head to head with Daron Payne in this game. Like they should just do a picture-in-picture of that matchup, like on every play, and just be able to watch Sewell and Payne, because Payne a lot of times lines up, I think, on that side. So that one could be fun to watch, because he is one of those huge run defenders who usually requires a double team, and I think they're going to stick Sewell on him one-on-one, because that's maybe the only guy in the league who could do it.
Yeah, that I love that idea, that picture-in-picture, because that's a matchup you're going to want to watch, and hopefully the cameras will pick up on it and show us some replays. Amon-Ra St. Brown's been busy. He's got his blue hair back for the playoffs, just like last year. It's exciting. It's fun. Be interested to see how many people are at the game with that. On his podcast, he also referenced Home Bakery in Rochester. The people there made an incredible cake of Amon-Ra St. Brown, which I think many people have already seen on social media. It's him doing the headstand. And he wanted to give a little extra love to them, so he said anybody that goes there between January 13th and 16th would be automatically entered for a chance to win tickets, I believe, to this week's playoff game. And St. Brown was actually at the bakery on Monday to check the cake out in person. So awesome creative work by Home Bakery. I've never been, but I may have to check it out one of these times. And nicely done by Amon-Ra St. Brown for showing some love there and bringing some attention their way. That little attention, I'm sure, has helped their sales quite a bit. Speaking of sales, you guys, the Washington fans, I believe, are really pumped for this game, because I don't think it's just the Detroit Lions fans that are driving the prices up for this game right now. Field Yates on Twitter today, X, he said the average price for the ticket of a game is $991 on TickPick, making it the most expensive, not Wildcard game ever, NFL game excluding Super Bowls on record. That means that is more expensive than any AFC or NFC championship game. And this is the divisional round. So, I mean, that's pretty incredible, James.
Yeah, and I think the minimum price, I think they said that on that was $551 or whatever was the lowest price. I checked Ticketmaster this morning, and I think the cheapest ticket you could find was $515, and that was nosebleed, like almost all the way to the top.
Did that include Ticketmaster fees?
Nope.
Oh, all right. So you gotta add those in too. There you go. Well, and again, we're not shocked, as I professed like a year and a half ago or whatnot, is if the Lions make the Super Bowl, when the Lions make the Super Bowl, those ticket prices are going to set a new record. And obviously, every year you go forward, inflation and this always brought, movie ticket prices are more expensive now than they were 50 years ago because of inflation, but also demand and desire play the bigger role in this. And we saw it every game the Lions played in the playoffs last year. I think I saw you can go to all 3 playoff games this weekend, just like last year, for the same price or less than just the Lions game, Coach. So I don't know if you could factor in your airplane tickets, but you could hit one on Saturday and probably only one on Sunday. But, that speaks to the Lions base and how excited they are for this.
Oh, for sure, which is great. I mean, I love it that we're, that many people want to go and they want to spend that money and be a part of it. That's why I'm going down to Detroit. I'll be at Buffalo Wild Wings. I have an 8-man table set up because we know the owner pretty well, and I'm going to enjoy it. And I will be outside of Ford Field after the victory, shaking hands with everybody and taking pictures like I was inside.
Coach, I'm going to look for you down there because I've been there before games, and that's a great place to hang out and be before a game. And even during a game, if you're not able to get in, because the atmosphere there should be electric. I actually love the schedule. Kansas City and Houston play the first game on Saturday at 4:30. The Lions and Washington get the 8 p.m. Saturday game. You guys, this sets us up really well because the Lions were on a bye. Washington was playing on Sunday, so they got the short week. If that matters, it's one less day. And then if the Lions, when the Lions, can the Lions, should the Lions get that win and go 1-0, well, then you have the opportunity to sit on Sunday, and you've got 2 games that would be stress-free at that point. You watch the Rams and Eagles at 3, followed by the Ravens and Bills at 6:30. So, before we get to the ref report, any other major storylines you want to bring up here, James?
I just had one little thing about we already touched on the 4th down conversion rate and stuff, but there's a pretty good number of ex-Lions on this Commanders team, and vice versa. I think Jerry was talking earlier in our text chat about David Blau is the assistant quarterbacks coach for them. Anthony Lynn is their running backs coach. But then there's also Zach Ertz, who was short timer in the playoffs last year. Cornelius Lucas, remember him?
Yeah,
Swing
kind
tackle
of.
for the Lions for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he came into the season as a potential starter for them until somebody else came in and took the left tackle job. Jeff Driscoll is their backup quarterback.
Oh, I remember him.
Nick Bellore on special teams, former Lion for like 3 years. Austin Seibert, a kicker. We mentioned that they're on their 4th one, so he's on IR. Bobby Price, safety, who played for 3 years for the Lions and was a kind of a big special teams guy from 20 to 22. And then Max Percher, who was on the Lions practice squad all last year. He was that international guy, I think, from Germany. So they got an exclusion to get one more guy on the practice squad than normal. And he was on our practice squad all year. He's on theirs this year. So, and then, earlier this year in the offseason, Jake Fromm was on their roster and is on the Lions practice squad now. And then Anthony Pittman played for the Commanders before getting released and coming back to Detroit.
All right, maybe some frequent flyer shopping miles between those 2 teams, but yeah, so a lot of familiar faces on that other side. Not always the case. All right, James, what do you got for the ref report here?
They get Rob Torbert's crew this year, the first time that they've gotten this crew since December of 2022. And he's a longtime referee, one of the few head referees in the league who's African American. He's been longtime referee, held in pretty good regard around the league too. The last time he did a Lions game was Minnesota in 2022. That game, Detroit got 7 penalties, Minnesota only got 3. Maybe one reason why he doesn't do a whole lot of Lions games is because he's a Michigan State grad. He doesn't live in Michigan or anything, but he went to Michigan State for his undergrad and then went to Harvard for his doctorate. I mean, he's a lawyer, so they are a very flag happy crew. They're the 2nd highest in the league as far as how many flags they've thrown this season, 237 in 16 games. So that doesn't bode well, but they split them almost exactly evenly on the home and away team. So they haven't shown any preference there. They had one game this season where they threw 24 flags in one game. That is a ton. They did a Washington game earlier this season and threw 19 flags. So they pretty aggressively call holding and defensive pass interference, offensive holding and defensive pass interference. And Detroit and Washington are the two most penalized teams in the league for defensive pass interference in this season, with 19 for Washington and 18 for Detroit.
Wait, wait,
10
wait, wait, wait. Does that mean the Lions might actually get a penalty when we're on offense for defensive pass interference?
Maybe they're playing one of the few teams that has more defensive pass interference calls than them. Uh, so
All right.
maybe they get more, maybe they draw their second one of the season. So interestingly, though, those 18 pass interference calls, 10 of them are on Terry Arnold.
Yeah, and how many of them are after week 7? That's the other thing I would love to
Not
know.
the majority are not. Yeah, he got
Right.
called for like 6 in the first 4 weeks or something.
Yeah. Okay, guys, what's it going to take for the Lions to win this game? They come in, the spread opened at 8.5. Okay, and I was like, wow, that's big. I looked at it today; it's up to 10. All right, and when I talked to Chick Hernandez, he says I stopped looking at numbers a long time ago, and I go, yeah, because there's a lot of things the spread can't measure. But Coach, I want to start with you. 10-point favorite. What's it going to take for the Lions to get the job done and win this game?
I think it's going to come down to the turnover battle, and it's going to come down which defense creates a turnover in a critical situation. And I think that's if you're plus, I think if you're +1, if we're +1 in the turnover, we got a great chance of winning the game. Okay, if we're in the negative part, it's going to be a little bit closer, and then we have to establish and use our run game to dictate how the clock is going to be managed and go from there. So, but I think the turnover battle is the biggest thing for us to win this game.
All right, yeah, I think one of the things that Washington had to do against Tampa was play a perfect game, and that is what they had to do. They had no turnovers. I want to say time of possession wins it because that makes a lot of sense by keeping our defense fresh to tiring theirs out. But I think the biggest thing is don't let the Commanders stick around. I think that's it right there, because what their last 5 games have been final possession victories. They've had so many comebacks in the fourth quarter. You gotta, if you get the lead, you got to keep pushing and not allow that opportunity at the end there. I think that's going to be one of the big things right there. James, what are you seeing?
Yeah, pretty similarly along that line of time of possession is just run the ball early, run the ball often. Getting David Montgomery back is going to be, I think, key in that, to just chew up clock, long grinding possessions, sprinkle some shock plays in there, some trick plays maybe. Ben Johnson's going to do those things, but the run sets up all those things. So the Commanders gave up 146 and 150 yards to Saquon Barkley in their 2 meetings this season. Their run defense is not great, so take it. Run the ball early, often, keep doing it, and then set up a few other things, fine, but just run the ball and keep going, keep piling up points.
There you go. And one other thing that would really help the Lions win would be more red zone defense. Even if you give up some big plays, keeping them short of the red zone. And we know Washington's going to go for it on 4th down in this game. That could be a key factor as well. All right, well, let's look at predictions. I'm going to predict the game atmosphere is going to be ecstatic. I think it's going to be it has the potential to be the best game atmosphere of the season. That Minnesota one was incredible. But if they open the windows at Ford Field, they might hear Coach yelling from B-dubs during that game. It's very possible. So I'm expecting the game atmosphere to play a role in this one, because even though we hear that all the flights, I know people that live in Washington were trying to come to the game, and they were telling me the flights are booked up. If you looked at hotels, Coach, I know you got yours early. I got mine early. Good thing, because they're almost all sold out. And so some are people from Michigan driving there and spending the night like us. Others are coming from out of town. That atmosphere is going to be different than the Tampa one. There were a lot of Washington fans in Tampa. You could hear it. I'm sure there will be a number here, but I think it may be more like that Minnesota number, maybe somewhere around there. And even with all those fans, James, at the Lions-Vikings game, you still hear that Lions crowd, way over any of that Vikings crowd.
Oh yeah, for sure. And well, and the Vikings supposedly had more fans than the Rams at that neutral site game. They got moved to Arizona. Didn't help them that much. But the Commanders fans seem to be real geeked up about this game and coming to it, like you said. I was kind of stalking a couple of Commanders message boards, and man, they're excited about this season. A lot of them don't think they're going to win this game, but man, they're happy about the season that they've had and the potential for their season and the franchise going forward.
Coach, can we get that pledge from you if the windows are open and they're trying to set the noise meter, breaking that record? You're going to be yelling from B-Dubs to try and help out?
Well, there's no doubt. I'm going to make sure I am heard. I'm going to help push that decibels over 135. So if not, I know that B Dubs will be pretty loud.
For sure. And I think all of Detroit is hoping to rock as well. All right, guys, other predictions. James, you got a prediction for this of any sort?
I think that Jamison Williams scores a touchdown in this. Their top two corners are Marshawn Lattimore, who's 6 foot, and then Mike Sandersell, the Michigan rookie, who's 5'10". So it makes sense for them to put Sandersell on Amon-Ra St. Brown, to keep the height together. But Lattimore is coming off a hamstring injury, so if they get him locked up one-on-one with Jamison Williams, they're going to take some deep shots on a 6 foot corner that's got a hamstring injury, and I think that Jamison Williams is going to take advantage of one of those to the house.
All right, that sounds fun to see. Coach, how about you?
I'm going to predict that all three of our coordinators pull something out. That's all I'm going to say. All three of our coordinators are going to pull something out.
I'm liking that one a lot. The Denver game, right? They had a fake punt. And I was like, wow, hey, look at that, Denver. And my uncle, huge Denver fan, he's like, we're the most boring team ever. Well, against the Vikings, we weren't too crazy on offense with stuff. I think I agree. All the coordinators will pull something out. It's the playoffs. I'm expecting Ben Johnson and company to at least do one, if not two different things on offense. And I don't have a prediction. I predict Aaron Glenn's going to be prepared on defense because – yeah, I want to see what he pulls out, Coach. It's going to be interesting because nobody saw what they did coming against Minnesota. They're like, no one's crazy enough to run a defense like that against a 14-2 team. And they did it, and it was exactly what they needed. So be fun to keep an eye on. All right, we're about to get out of here. Coach, any final thoughts?
Nope, just go Lions.
James, how about you?
Nope, go Jamo, make me look good.
All right,
I
folks.
need to get right on some of these sooner or later.
Well, you know what? I don't know how many people go back and double check, but it's okay. I hear you on the wanting to get right. That's okay. We let them know when we are right, and then when we're wrong, we just kind of hope you forget. But
yeah, just don't go back and listen to the fantasy football episode.
All in good fun. All in good. But listen to the next one we come out with next summer. Please listen to that one. So. All right, folks, hey, thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy this week. Enjoy this weekend. You can find more episodes and content at notthesameoldlions.com. Tell your friends and family about the show. Like, comment on social, subscribe, regardless of your listening platform. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.